The stars had never felt so cold to Admiral John Mercer. He stood at the observation deck of Earth's main orbital station, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the approaching ships. 20 Council enforcement vessels moved through the darkness like predators circling wounded prey. They came every year at this time. They came to remind humanity of its place. John was 62 years old. He had served in Earth's small defense fleet for 40 years. He had watched his species bow and scrape before alien masters for his entire adult life. Every year, the ritual was the same. The Council ships would arrive. Their ambassadors would step onto human stations with disgust on their faces. They would take what they wanted and leave humanity with barely enough to survive. The doors behind him opened with a soft hiss. His aide, Lieutenant Emma Price, walked in carrying a. She was young, only 28, but her eyes carried the same tired acceptance that marked everyone who understood humanity's true position in the galaxy. "Sir, the ambassador's shuttle has docked," she said. "They're requesting your presence at the tribute ceremony." John did not turn around. "Requesting," he repeated. The word tasted bitter. "They don't request anything, Lieutenant. They demand, they always demand." Emma said nothing. There was nothing to say. The tribute ceremony took place in the station's main hall. Representatives from Earth's government stood in neat rows, their faces carefully blank. Armed council soldiers lined the walls, their weapons gleaming under the harsh lights. They were not needed, of course. Humanity had no weapons that could challenge them. The council had made sure of that 200 years ago. Ambassador Al stepped forward. He was tall, nearly 8 feet, with a hard shell covering his body and multiple arms that clicked and gestured as he spoke. His species had conquered 100 worlds before humans had learned to make fire. To him, Earth was nothing more than a useful source of minerals and labor. "People of Earth," Al announced, his translator turning his clicking speech into cold, flat words. "The Galaxy Council acknowledges your tribute. You have met your obligations for another cycle. Be grateful for the Council's protection." John watched as crates of rare minerals were loaded onto Council shuttles. Those minerals could have built schools. They could have funded hospitals. They could have given hope to the billions of humans who lived in poverty because their world was bled dry every year. But the tribute was not the worst part. The worst part came next. Al turned to face the assembled humans. His compound eyes swept across them with obvious contempt. "However," he continued, "the Council has noted increased activity in your outer colonies. You have built 3 new mining stations without authorization. This is a violation of Treaty 7, Section 4. A murmur ran through the human representatives. Those mining stations were essential. Without them, Earth could not meet next year's tribute. "The stations will be destroyed," Al declared. "Additionally, your shipbuilding capacity will be reduced by 30%. You have proven that you cannot be trusted with even limited freedoms." John felt his fingernails dig into his palms. Beside him, Emma's face had gone pale. 30%. That would cripple their merchant fleet. Thousands would lose their jobs. Millions would go hungry. Senator Amy stepped forward. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had spent her entire career trying to work within the Council's rules, finding small victories where she could. "Ambassador," she said calmly, "surely we can discuss this. Earth has always been loyal to the Council. We simply need those resources to meet our obligations." Al made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your loyalty is not questioned, Senator. Your obedience is. There will be no discussion. The decision is final." The ceremony ended shortly after. The Council ships departed with their tribute, leaving behind a station full of silent, defeated humans. John remained on the observation deck long after everyone else had left. He watched the enemy ships shrink into the distance until they were nothing but points of light among the stars. Emma found him there an hour later. "Sir, are you all right?" John finally turned to face her. Something in his eyes made her take a step back. It was not anger, though anger was there. It was something deeper, something patient and cold. "Tell me, Lieutenant," he said quietly, "do you believe this is how it will always be?" Emma hesitated. "Sir, I don't understand." "Do you believe humanity will bow forever? Do you believe we will spend eternity as servants, watching our children grow up with their heads down and their spirits broken?" She did not know how to answer. Such thoughts were dangerous. The council had spies everywhere, but something in the Admiral's voice made her want to tell the truth. "No, sir," she whispered, "I don't believe that." John nodded slowly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device, no larger than a coin. He pressed it, and suddenly Emma's began displaying information she had never seen before. Ship designs, fleet compositions, training records, coordinates to places that did not exist on any official chart. "Good," John said, "because it won't be this way forever, not even for much longer." Across the solar system, near the orbit of Neptune, Commander Kate guided her small shuttle toward coordinates that should have been empty space. She was 40 years old, a career officer who had spent most of her life running supply missions to remote outposts. Nothing exciting, nothing important. At least, that was what she had always believed. The orders had arrived 3 days ago, encrypted with codes she had never seen before. "Report to these coordinates. Tell no one. Trust no one except the sender." The sender was listed only as Ghost Command. Kate was not a woman who frightened easily. She had survived pirate attacks, equipment failures, and one very close call with a solar flare. But as her shuttle emerged from behind a massive asteroid, she felt fear grip her heart. Ships filled the space before her, hundreds of them. No, not hundreds, thousands. Dreadnoughts 5 kilometers long, carriers bristling with fighter bays, destroyers and cruisers and support vessels beyond counting. Every single one bore the flag of Earth. Her communications console crackled to life. "Commander," a calm voice said, "welcome to the Ghost Armada. You have been selected to join the greatest secret in human history. Dock at Bay 47. Your briefing begins in 1 hour." Kate's hands trembled on the controls. She had spent her whole life believing humanity was weak, believing they had no choice but to serve. Now, staring at this impossible fleet hidden in the darkness between worlds, she understood that everything she knew was a lie. Humanity had been planning, humanity had been building, and humanity was almost ready. The next tribute would be the Council's last. 50 years ago, a young Lieutenant John Mercer had been part of a routine survey team on Mars. They were mapping underground caves, looking for suitable locations for new mining operations. It was boring work, the kind of assignment given to junior officers who had not yet proven themselves. On the third day, John's scanner picked up something strange, a metallic signature deep beneath the surface, larger than anything that should have been there. Against protocol, he went to investigate alone. What he found changed everything. The chamber was vast, carved from solid rock by tools no human had ever seen. In the center sat a device that hummed with power even after countless of silence. John did not understand what he was looking at, but he knew enough to recognize that it was important. He reported his finding to his superiors, expecting praise and promotion. Instead, men in dark suits arrived within hours. They took John to a room with no windows. They asked him questions for 3 days straight. Then they made him an offer. "You have discovered something that could free humanity," a gray-haired woman told him. "But only if no one else ever learns of it. The Council has spies everywhere. If they discover this technology, they will destroy Earth completely. We need time, decades of time. Are you willing to give your life to a secret you can never speak of?" John had said yes. He was not the first, and he would not be the last. Now, 50 years later, Commander Kate sat in a briefing room aboard the flagship of the Ghost Armada. The ship was called the Dawn's Light, and it was larger than any vessel she had ever seen. Vice Admiral Lisa stood at the front of the room, explaining the history that Kate had just learned. The device Lieutenant Mercer found was a jump drive, Lisa said. Her voice was calm and precise, the voice of someone who had spent decades keeping impossible secrets. Far more advanced than anything the Council possesses. With it, we could travel to places they could not follow. We could build without being seen. We could prepare. Kate raised her hand. How many people know about this? Currently, approximately 480,000 military personnel and another 200,000 support staff, plus certain members of Earth's government who have been carefully vetted over the decades. The numbers were staggering. Nearly 700,000 people, all keeping the same secret, some of them for their entire lives. Kate thought of her own father, a retired cargo ship captain who had died 10 years ago. Had he known? Had he been part of this? Lisa continued the briefing. The Ghost Armada consisted of 412 capital ships, 2,000 support vessels, and enough firepower to challenge any force in the known galaxy. Every ship had been built in secret facilities hidden in the void between stars. Every crew member had been recruited carefully, tested for loyalty, and trained far from Council censors. "We are almost ready," Lisa said, "but there is one more piece of information you need to understand." She pressed a button, and the display changed to show surveillance footage from a Council station. Kate watched as alien officials discussed humanity in cold, clinical terms. "The human population has grown beyond acceptable limits," one of them said. "They are too ambitious, too clever. If we do not act soon, they will become a threat." Another official nodded. "Project Harvest has been approved. We will engineer a famine on their core worlds, reduce their population by 60% over the next 2 decades. They will never know it was deliberate." The recording ended. Kate felt sick. "This footage was obtained by one of our infiltration teams," Lisa said. "The Council plans to kill billions of humans through manufactured starvation. They see us as vermin to be controlled. We cannot allow this to happen." In Council space far from Earth, Captain Sam crouched in the shadows of a maintenance corridor. His team surrounded him, 4 of the best operatives humanity had ever trained. Ben, their tech specialist, was working on a locked door. Drake, their pilot, watched the corridor behind them. Cole, their infiltration expert, had already disabled the security cameras. 30 seconds, Ben whispered. Sam nodded. They had been planning this mission for 6 months. A Council military station held the complete defense network layout for the inner systems. With that information, the Ghost Armada would know exactly where to strike and where the enemy was weakest. The door clicked open. They moved quickly and quietly, years of training making their movements smooth and coordinated. The data center was 3 levels down. They encountered 2 guards on the way, both neutralized silently and hidden in storage closets. Ben connected his device to the central computer. Data began flowing. Sam watched the progress bar creep forward, his heart pounding in his chest. If they were caught here, there would be no rescue. The Council did not take human prisoners. "Got it," Ben said. "Complete defense grid for 47 systems." They were moving toward the exit when the alarm started. Red lights flashed. Doors began sealing. Somehow they had been detected. "Run," Sam ordered. They sprinted through the corridors, emergency bulkheads slamming down behind them. Council soldiers appeared ahead, weapons raised. Threw a flash grenade while returned fire with precise shots. They pushed through, leaving chaos in their wake. The hangar bay was just ahead. Their small ship waited, engines already warming up. They were going to make it. Then Sam saw the Council destroyer rising outside the windows. Its weapons were powering up, aimed directly at their ship. No breathed. Sam prepared himself for death. He had always known this mission might be his last. At least the data would die with them. At least Earth would be safe a little longer. The destroyer fired. But the shots did not hit their ship. Instead, they struck an empty section of space that suddenly was not empty anymore. A human vessel materialized out of nowhere, its hull absorbing the attack. Then it returned fire, and the Council destroyer exploded in a ball of flame. A transmission came through to Sam's communicator. "Captain, this is the stealth destroyer Silent Thunder. We've been watching over you. Get to your ship. We're going home." Sam stared at the human vessel hanging in space, where nothing had been moments before. Even after years of knowing about the Ghost Armada, seeing one of their ships in action left him speechless. They reached their vessel and launched immediately, the Silent Thunder covering their escape. As they jumped away from the Council station, Sam allowed himself to smile. The Council had discovered that something was wrong, but they had no idea how wrong. On Earth, Admiral John Mercer received the mission report with grim satisfaction. The defense grid data was already being analyzed. The Ghost Armada's final preparations were accelerating. He walked to his window and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, Council officials were panicking, trying to understand what had just happened. Let them panic. Let them wonder. Their time was running out. The Council's response came faster than expected. 300 warships emerged from jump space at the edge of Earth's solar system, their weapons powered and their intentions clear. This was not a diplomatic visit. This was a show of force meant to terrify humanity into submission. Ambassador Al broadcast his message on all frequencies, making sure every human heard his words. "People of Earth, you have committed acts of aggression against the Galaxy Council. Unknown attackers destroyed a Council destroyer near our space. We have reason to believe these attackers were human. You will submit to a complete inspection of all your facilities, ships, and colonies. If you refuse, you will be destroyed." In the Emergency Command Center beneath Geneva, Earth's leaders gathered around a holographic display. President was a tall man with tired eyes who had spent his entire career trying to keep humanity alive under Council oppression. Secretary of Defense Rachel Brooks stood beside him, her face pale as she watched the enemy fleet spread out across the display. 300 ships, Rachel said quietly. "We have 47. Even if we fought to the last man, we couldn't stop them." President turned to the figure standing in the shadows at the back of the room. "Admiral Mercer, is it time?" John stepped forward into the light. He had waited 50 years for this moment, 50 years of secrecy and sacrifice and watching his people suffer. Now, finally, the waiting was over. "Yes, Mr. President," he said, "it is time." John walked to the main console and entered a code that only 12 people in all of human history had ever known. Across the solar system, across 1,000 hidden bases and secret installations, that code triggered a sequence that had been prepared decades ago. Then he turned to face the cameras that would broadcast his words to every screen on Earth. "People of Earth," John said, his voice calm and steady. "For 200 years we have bowed before the Council. We have given them our resources. We have accepted their insults. We have watched our children grow up believing that humanity would forever be slaves. Today, I am here to tell you that was never true." He paused, letting the words sink in. "For 50 years in secret we have been building, we have been training, we have been preparing for this day. The Council believes we are weak. The Council believes we have no choice but to submit. The Council is wrong." At that moment, space itself seemed to tear open around the Council fleet. Jump points materialized by the hundreds, and from each one emerged ships bearing the flag of Earth. Dreadnoughts longer than Council vessels had ever seen. Carriers launching swarms of fighters. Destroyers moving with speed and precision that should have been impossible. The Ghost Armada had arrived. Ambassador Al watched from his flagship as human ships surrounded his fleet. His compound eyes widened in shock. This could not be happening. The humans had no such fleet. The humans had no such technology. His sensors had to be malfunctioning. But his sensors were working perfectly. Commander Kate sat in the captain's chair of the carrier Defiance, watching her display fill with green icons representing human ships. She had spent the last month training for this moment, learning the systems of her new command, meeting the crew she would lead into battle. Now all that preparation was about to be tested. "All fighter squadrons report ready," her tactical officer announced. Kate nodded. "Hold position, wait for the Admiral's order." Across the battlefield, Vice Admiral Lisa coordinated the encirclement from the flagship Dawn's Light. Every ship knew its place. Every captain understood the plan. They had practiced this scenario hundreds of times in the depths between galaxies. Now they would execute it for real. Captain Dan commanded the destroyer group closest to the Council flagship. His task was simple but critical: prevent the enemy commander from escaping. He positioned his ships with careful precision, blocking every possible retreat route. "Council fleet," Dan broadcast. "You are surrounded. Power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted out of our space. This is your only warning." For a long moment, nothing happened. The two fleets hung in space, weapons locked on each other, waiting. Then Al made his choice. "All ships attack, destroy these human vermin." The Council fleet opened fire. Thousands of energy beams lanced through space toward the human ships. Kate gripped her armrests, bracing for impact. The beams hit human shields and stopped cold. The technology developed from that ancient Martian device was generations ahead of anything the Council possessed. What should have torn through human ships like paper instead splashed harmlessly against barriers of invisible force. "Return fire," Admiral Mercer's voice came through the command channel. "All ships engage." The Ghost Armada responded with devastating precision. Human weapons, also derived from technology the Council had never seen, punched through enemy shields as if they did not exist. Council ships began exploding. First one, then 10, then 50. Kate launched her fighters. Thousands of small craft poured from her carrier's bays, swarming enemy vessels like angry hornets. Each fighter pilot had trained for years in secret academies hidden from Council eyes. They were the best humanity had ever produced, and they proved it now. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, 112 Council ships had been destroyed. 163 had surrendered. The remaining 25 had been crippled and were drifting without power. Not a single human ship had been lost. Ambassador Al stood on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by the bodies of his dead crew. The ship systems were failing. Smoke filled the air. He could see human ships approaching, their weapons still hot from battle. A transmission came through. Admiral Mercer's face appeared on the screen. "Ambassador," John said calmly, "your fleet is defeated. Your weapons are useless against us. You have a choice now. Surrender and your surviving crews will be treated humanely. Resist and you will be destroyed. Choose." Al wanted to fight. Every instinct in his ancient warrior's heart screamed at him to die with honor rather than submit to these primitives. But he thought of his crew. He thought of the other survivors throughout the fleet. "I surrender," he said, the words tasting like poison. On Earth, billions of people watched the battle footage in stunned silence. They saw their ships they never knew existed, crushing the fleet of their oppressors. They saw the mighty Council brought low in minutes. They saw the impossible become real. And then they began to cheer. Senator Amy ordered the broadcast sent to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Let them all see. Let every oppressed species, every conquered people, every slave know what had just happened. Humanity had risen, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Galaxy Council met on Nexus Prime, the ancient capital world of the oldest civilizations. The 12 elder races had not gathered like this in centuries. Fear filled the massive chamber where they debated humanity's fate. High Chancellor Eth presided over the meeting. His species had ruled among the stars for 50,000 years. They had crushed rebellions before. They had broken defiant races before, but what the humans had done was different. It was impossible, and impossible things terrified the Chancellor more than anything. "We must destroy them immediately," demanded the representative, "before they grow stronger, before they inspire others to rebel." "With what?" asked the ambassador, his serpentine body coiling with agitation. 300 ships were not enough. What makes you think more will succeed?" The argument raged for hours. Some wanted war. Some wanted negotiation. Some wanted to simply abandon the human sector and pretend the problem did not exist. But Eth knew that none of those options would work. If humanity was left unchecked, other species would see that the Council could be. The entire galactic order would collapse. "Enough," Eth finally said, his ancient voice silencing the chamber. "We will do what should have been done centuries ago. We will gather every ship from every member race. We will march on Earth with such overwhelming force that no technology can save them. We will not just defeat the humans, we will erase them." The combined Council Armada took 3 months to assemble. 15,000 warships from 12 different species, the largest fleet in the history of the galaxy. Nothing could stand against such a force. The humans might have won one battle, but they could not win this war. On Earth, Admiral John Mercer watched the enemy approach through long-range sensors. His own fleet numbered just over 2,000 ships now. Reinforcements had arrived from hidden bases, but they were still outnumbered 7-1. "They're coming with everything they have," Vice Admiral Lisa observed. She stood beside him on the bridge of the Dawn's Light, studying the tactical display. "Good," John replied. "That means there won't be anyone left to stop us when we win." Lisa looked at him. "You really believe we can beat 15,000 ships?" John smiled, a rare expression on his weathered face. "Do you remember Project Prometheus?" Lisa's eyes widened. She had heard rumors of something beyond the Ghost Armada, something even more secret. "I thought that was just a myth." "Every legend starts with a truth." John turned to his communications officer. "Get me Lieutenant Commander Chris Palmer." Chris Palmer was 29 years old and had never seen Earth. He had been born on a secret station in the void between galaxies, raised among the Ghost Armada, trained for a mission he had waited his entire life to perform. Now, sitting in a small control room buried deep beneath the surface of an unremarkable asteroid, he received the order he had been expecting. "Activate Prometheus," Admiral Mercer's voice said. Chris entered the sequence. Across Council space, in 47 different star systems, hidden devices that had been planted over 30 years activated simultaneously. These devices did not fire weapons. They did something much worse. They disrupted jump space, making faster-than-light travel impossible within their range. The Council fleet, already halfway to Earth, suddenly found itself trapped. They could not retreat to their home systems. They could not receive reinforcements. They could only move forward into the jaws of humanity's waiting guns. The Battle of Saul began at 1400 hours, Earth Standard Time. The Council fleet emerged from their final jump, expecting to face a desperate enemy defending their doomed. Instead, they found the Ghost Armada waiting in perfect formation, positioned exactly where they wanted to be. Vice Admiral Lisa commanded the defensive sphere around Earth. Her capital ships formed an unbreakable wall, their shields overlapping to create a barrier of pure energy. The Council fired everything they had at that wall. Nothing got through. Captain Sam led the fast attack squadrons that tore at the enemy flanks. His ships were small and nimble, darting between larger vessels, targeting engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. Where he struck, Council formations fell into chaos. Commander Kate's carrier group filled space with fighters. 10,000 small craft swarmed the enemy fleet, overwhelming their defenses through sheer numbers and skill. Each human pilot was worth 10 of their opponents, their training far superior to anything the Council had ever seen. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Council fleet pushed forward with desperate fury, knowing they had no retreat. Human ships took damage. Some were destroyed. But for every human vessel lost, 50 Council ships died. High Chancellor Eth watched from his flagship as his mighty armada crumbled around him. This could not be happening. The humans were primitives. The humans were slaves. The humans could not possibly be winning. But they were. Admiral Mercer gave the order to advance. The Ghost Armada pushed forward, crushing the enemy center. Council ships tried to scatter, but there was nowhere to go. Sam's squadrons harried them from behind while Lisa's heavy ships pounded them from the front. When the Council flagship was finally crippled, John Mercer boarded it personally. He walked through corridors filled with smoke and debris, stepping over fallen enemy soldiers. A Marine detachment led by Sergeant Major Jake Torres cleared the path ahead of him, but they encountered little resistance. The fight had gone out of the Council forces. John found Eth on the bridge, sitting alone among the wreckage of his command. The ancient alien looked up as the human admiral approached. For a long moment, neither spoke. "How?" Eth finally asked. "How did you do this?" John looked at him with cold eyes. "You made us slaves, you starved us, you killed us, and you thought we would never fight back. That was your mistake. Humans always fight back. We just chose when and how." He handed Eth a document. "These are our terms: unconditional surrender, dissolution of the Council's military authority, freedom for all restricted species. Sign, and your people will live. Refuse, and we will hunt down every Council world and burn them to ash." Eth read the terms. His hands trembled. 50,000 years of dominance, ended by creatures his ancestors had considered barely more than animals. He signed. The Battle of Saul was over. The Galaxy Council had fallen, and humanity, after 2 centuries of slavery, was finally free. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Saul. The galaxy had transformed in ways that would have seemed impossible just 12 months before. The old order was gone, and in its place, something new was rising. Admiral John Mercer stood on the observation deck of the Memorial Station orbiting Earth. He was 63 now, and the weight of his years showed in every line on his face. But his eyes were clear and peaceful in a way they had never been during the long decades of secrecy and preparation. Below him, Earth shone blue and green against the darkness of space. Ships of a dozen different species moved through orbit, trading vessels and diplomatic transports from races that had once been enemies. The Galaxy Council still existed, but it was no longer a tyranny. Now it served as a forum where species met as equals, debating and discussing rather than demanding and threatening. Lisa walked up beside him. She wore the insignia of Fleet Admiral now, the highest rank in human military service. John had recommended her for the position himself before announcing his retirement. "The ceremony is about to begin, sir," she said. "I know," John turned to face her. "You'll take good care of them, Lisa. The fleet, the people, I know you will." Lisa nodded. "I learned from the best." They walked together to the main hall, where hundreds of officers in dress uniforms waited. The walls were lined with platinum panels, each one inscribed with names. Nearly 500,000 names, every human who had served in the Ghost Armada, from the highest admiral to the lowest maintenance worker. They had kept the secret. They had made the sacrifice. Now their names would shine forever among the stars they had freed. John stepped to the podium. The crowd fell silent. "We gather today to honor those who made this possible," he said. "Not just the soldiers who fought, but everyone who kept our secret. The workers who built ships in hidden facilities. The families who said goodbye to loved ones without knowing where they were going. The leaders who carried the burden of knowledge while pretending to be helpless. All of them, every single one, played a part in our victory." He paused, looking out at the faces before him. Some he recognized. Many he did not. But they were all his people, the ones who had trusted him, followed him, believed in the impossible dream he had carried for 50 years. They called us primitive, John continued. They called us weak. They looked at us and saw nothing but animals fit for labor and tribute. They forgot something important. They forgot that the stars themselves are born from pressure and fire, and so were we. The applause that followed echoed through the station like thunder. Later that day, in a garden on Earth's surface, Captain Sam married Drake. The ceremony was small by choice, attended only by close friends and family. But among the guests were representatives from 40 different species, beings who had traveled across the galaxy to witness this union. Ben served as best man, his usual serious expression softened by joy. Cole sat in the front row, crying openly despite his reputation as the toughest infiltration specialist in the fleet. The old team was together one last time, celebrating something that had nothing to do with war. After the ceremony, as guests mingled in the warm afternoon sunlight, Senator Amy found a quiet moment with her brother. She had aged in the past year, the responsibilities of her new position weighing heavily on her shoulders. She was now Secretary General of the Galactic Coalition, the first human to hold the highest office in interstellar politics. "I'm proud of you, Sam," she said. Sam smiled. "I was just a soldier. You're the one changing the galaxy." Amy shook her head. "None of this would have been possible without the soldiers, without the sacrifices. The coalition exists because people like you were willing to risk everything." She pulled a small from her pocket. "This is the final draft of the Sentient Rights Charter. Every species in the coalition has agreed to it. Freedom of movement, freedom of expression, protection from exploitation. Things the Council everyone for." Sam took and read the opening lines. "All sentient beings are born equal in dignity and rights. No species shall dominate another. No world shall be enslaved." "It's a start," Amy said. "Just a start, but it's more than anyone had before." Across the Coalition's territory, change was spreading. The races once oppressed alongside humanity were finding their own voices. Trade routes opened between worlds that had never been allowed to communicate. Knowledge that had been hoarded by the elder races flowed freely. 1,000 cultures began to flourish in ways they had been forbidden to do for centuries. Rear Admiral Kate commanded the Exploration Initiative, a fleet of ships designed not for war but for discovery. Her mission was to push beyond the borders of known space, to find what lay in the vast darkness beyond the galaxy's edge. Her flagship, the New Horizon, was the most advanced vessel humanity had ever built. It carried a crew of 5,000, drawn from a dozen species, all united by curiosity and hope rather than fear and conquest. On the day of her departure, Kate received a message from Admiral Mercer. His face appeared on her screen, older and more tired than she remembered, but still carrying that unshakable determination she had first seen aboard the Dawn's Light. "Go find something wonderful, Kate," he said. "Show the galaxy what humanity can do when we're not fighting for survival. Show them what we can build when we're free." Kate smiled. "I intend to, sir." The New Horizon departed Earth orbit, its engines carrying it toward the unknown. The stars stretched out before it, infinite and full of promise. 6 months later, at the edge of charted space, Commander Chris Palmer detected something extraordinary. A transmission, weak but unmistakable, coming from beyond the galactic rim. An intelligence was calling out, seeking contact. Chris gathered his bridge crew around him. They had traveled farther from home than any humans before them. Now they were about to take the next step. "Open a channel," he ordered. A voice came through, strange and yet somehow familiar. Words in a language no one had ever heard, but beneath them, a clear message of greeting. Chris straightened in his chair. His whole life had led to this moment. Every sacrifice, every battle, every secret kept and promise honored. All of it had brought humanity here, to the threshold of something new. "This is Captain Chris Palmer of the Earth vessel New Horizon," he said. "We come in peace. We're human and we're here to say hello." The stars watched in silence as two civilizations reached out across the darkness. The galaxy that humanity had freed was about to grow larger, and whatever came next, whatever challenges waited beyond the edge of the known, one thing was certain. Humanity would face them standing tall, no longer slaves, no longer afraid. Free at last, among the stars they had earned the right to call home.